We live in the age of quick answers, of cheap opinions, of short videos and ready-made phrases, a time where everyone wants to seem like they know, but almost no one has the courage to stop and ask. Because to truly ask requires silence, it requires humility, it requires facing the void that might be behind the answer. And modern humans are afraid of the void, afraid of what can't be solved with a notification or a tutorial. But today, right here, this question needs to be asked. A question that doesn't show up in the trending topics, that doesn't become a meme, and that maybe no one is willing to listen to until the end. What if humans really are ending? Not by explosion, nor by war, nor by AI out of control, but through a much more subtle process, and precisely because of that, much more dangerous. What if the end isn't coming from the outside, but from within? What if the end is already happening, silently, in fragments, and no one noticed? Because when we speak of the end of humanity, our minds immediately jump to images of apocalypse, of destroyed cities, of robots taking over the world. But what if this end isn't visual? What if it's happening right now, while you listen to this video? In habits, in conversations, in desires and fears, in the choices people are making every day or failing to make. Humanity doesn't need to be annihilated to disappear. It just needs to be emptied of what makes it human. And what is it that makes us human, after all? The body? No. The body can be imitated, replaced. The mind? Not that either. Machines already think, and sometimes better than us. Emotion? Not even that. There are already algorithms capable of simulating empathy, of reacting emotionally with perfection. What makes us human is the essence. The ability to love without return. To sacrifice for something greater, to die for a truth, to bear the weight of freedom even when it hurts, to choose what's right even when no one is watching, to believe in something invisible, to keep the soul standing when everything else collapses. But the question is, how many people are still living this way? How many still carry that spark inside them? How many still wake up in the morning with the awareness that they were born for more than just surviving? More than buying, posting, consuming, repeating, we're getting used to the inhuman. We're normalizing apathy, we're trading virtue for performance, trading sacrifice for convenience, trading the eternal for the now. And the scariest part, we're doing all this while thinking we're progressing, thinking we're evolving. Because now everything is faster, more accessible, more comfortable. But deep down, we know something's wrong. Something is being lost. You feel it even if you can't explain it. You feel it when you see an empty video go viral, when you hear a conversation where no one says anything, when you look in the mirror and realize another day has passed without truly living. Maybe this is the real end of humanity. Not chaos, but exhaustion. Not disaster, but disinterest. Not death, but the forgetting of our very essence. And maybe this is the most important question of our era. Not how to gain more followers, not how to win political debates, not how to automate life, but simply, are we still truly alive? Are we still human, or do we just look like them? If this question bothered you, good, it was meant to. To bother, to awaken, to break the numbness. Because only those who feel this discomfort are still awake. And maybe, just maybe, those who are awake can still rebuild something before the last piece of our essence disappears. This video is not an apocalyptic alarm. It's a mirror, and if you have the courage to stay until the end, maybe there's still something inside you that the whole world is trying to forget. The human spark. The one that resists collapse. The one that doesn't sell out, doesn't give in, doesn't empty out. The one still capable of asking, what if? And after asking, decides to act. Much is said about the collapse of the world. Climate collapse, political collapse, economic collapse, but almost no one notices that the most dangerous collapse is the one no one is seeing. It's the collapse of consciousness, the collapse of what makes us human on the inside. The human mind is fragmented, the heart is numb, the will is weakened, and the soul forgotten. It's as if we're walking through a world of internal ruins, but too distracted to notice. The collapse didn't begin with the fall of institutions. It began with the fall of man from within. Humanity is dissolving, not in numbers, but in spirit. We're losing something essential, the awareness of what we are and what we were meant to be. Human consciousness has always been what upheld civilizations. It was what made us look to the sky and ask, who are we? Why are we here? What's the meaning of all this? But now, those questions have been replaced by metrics. by distractions, by engagement formula. Consciousness was silenced by convenience, replaced by impulses, by thought addictions, by algorithms that think for you. People who once reflected now repeat. People who once sought wisdom now seek approval. And the most tragic part is that this transition wasn't forced. It was chosen, accepted, applauded. Modern man abandoned the effort of being deep, of being whole, of being integrated. Today he accepts living fragmented as long as he still feels included. And when consciousness falls asleep, everything becomes performance. Truth becomes narrative. Virtue becomes marketing. Justice becomes a campaign. Wisdom becomes a joke. And faith becomes a product. We are living in an age where the appearance of consciousness has replaced true awareness. You can look conscious. You can post beautiful quotes. You can share rented outrage. You can look woke and still be completely disconnected from yourself. Because true consciousness is not a style, not an aesthetic, not a social media identity. Consciousness is war. It's a battle against apathy. It's a confrontation with self-deception. It's pain. It's responsibility. It's sacrifice for something greater. And today, people want anything except to sacrifice. The dissolution of consciousness is slow. It doesn't scream. It doesn't burst like an economic crisis. It doesn't make headlines like a war. It simply drips away, day after day, until man no longer remembers what it means to be alive. When that happens, the body still moves. The bills are still paid. The stories are still posted. But the spark is gone, and no one notices, because everyone around them lost it too. The dissolution of consciousness is the true end of humanity, and it might be much further along than we realize. But not all is lost, because the simple fact that you're listening to this, the simple fact that you still care about this question, means your consciousness is still alive. Maybe weakened, maybe asleep, but alive. And if it's alive, then there's still time. Time to rebuild what is collapsing, to seek again what was forgotten, to reactivate what the whole world tried to silence within you, your human essence. Because in the end, it's not machines that kill man. It's the daily choice to live as if he were just one of them. The dissolution can be stopped, but only if you choose to remember who you truly are. And from here on out, that memory must become action. There is a silent tragedy unfolding before our eyes, but since it makes no noise, most people don't even notice. We don't see blood, we don't see bodies on the ground, we don't hear explosions, but what's dying is the desire to live. New generations are committing a kind of suicide that doesn't show up in the news. It's a suicide of the soul, of will, of purpose. It's the suicide of hope. The collapse of what once made someone wake up with a sparkle in their eyes. What we're witnessing is not just a passing existential crisis. It's a collective erosion of the will to exist with meaning. We've never been so connected, never had so much information, so many stimuli, so many resources. But at the same time, we've never been so confused, so numb, so empty. We live the cruelest contradiction of the digital age. The more connected we are to the world, the more disconnected we are from ourselves. And the scariest part, we're getting used to it. We think it's normal to feel nothing. We think it's normal to wake up tired of life. We think it's normal to escape consciousness with screens, sounds, drugs, sex, fake laughter. Today, most people aren't living. They're just distracting themselves from the fact that they're dying inside. And the system loves that, because the emptier the soul, the easier it is to fill it with anything. And if you don't know why you live, they'll sell you 10 new reasons every day. None of them true, all disposable. New generations were taught that everything is relative. Everything is temporary. Everything is about pleasure. But no one taught that pleasure without purpose becomes addiction. That freedom without direction becomes a prison, and that living without truth is dying without meaning. The world isn't killing the youth with weapons. It's killing them with promises. Promises of freedom without sacrifice, of success without work, of happiness without responsibility, of purpose without pain. It's modern nihilism, but disguised. No longer the sad philosophical nihilism of Nietzsche or Dostoevsky. It's a colorful nihilism, with a soundtrack, with stories, with influencers, a happy nihilism. But the soul feels it. The soul always feels it. It knows it's being deceived. It screams even when the body smiles. And that's why depression, anxiety, and real suicide rates are skyrocketing. Because you can't sustain a meaningless life for long, not even with infinite entertainment. People are slowly killing themselves. Not with poison, but with the abandonment of their mission. They no longer know why they're here. And when a being loses its why, it loses everything. And you know what's the cruelest detail of it all? Most don't even realize it, because this suicide is invisible. It doesn't show up in conversations, it doesn't show up in the mirror, it hides in excess, in programmed smiles, in toxic productivity, in the escape from every silence. The most lost generations are exactly the most connected ones, because they're exposed to everything except their own truth. They're being fed with everything that exists except what really matters. And when everything matters, nothing has value. But there is a way out. There is an antidote. There is a silent revolution that can begin now. This revolution begins when someone stops, thinks, feels, listens to their own emptiness, and decides not to run. It begins when someone trades distraction for purpose, empty pleasure for building something real, convenience for truth, appearance for essence. That someone could be you. And this video is not just a warning, it's a spark to remind you that life is still worth it, but only if you're willing to live it truthfully. Because those who live only to escape pain have already given up on life deep down. But those who choose to face pain with purpose, they are the ones who can reignite the will to exist. Humanity is experiencing something unprecedented in its history. For the first time, we've created something that can do what we do faster, with fewer errors, and without rest. But the greatest impact of this isn't economic, it's not political, it's not even technological, it's existential. Because the question that arises in the silence of the night, when the noise of videos and screens fades away, is this: if machines are becoming more and more efficient, what's left for me? That's the fear, that's the wound, and it is also perhaps the opportunity. The problem isn't the machines. Artificial intelligence on its own is a tool. It has no soul, it has no will, it has no purpose. It doesn't want to take over the world unless someone wants that for it. The real problem lies in the human being who gave up on being irreplaceable. Yes, modern man isn't losing ground because of the machine's efficiency. He's losing ground because he let go of what made him unique. He stopped thinking deeply, he stopped reflecting in silence, he stopped speaking with responsibility, he stopped acting with purpose. And in place of all that came the rush, came copy-paste, came shortcuts, came empty entertainment, came the search for answers without ever asking questions. Do you see it now? The problem was never artificial intelligence. The problem is the human without identity. The human who prefers to be efficient rather than authentic. The human who is content to repeat what's already been said, to produce what pleases, to live what everyone else is living, even if that slowly kills their soul. What sets us apart from machines was never productivity. It has always been consciousness, intention, voluntary sacrifice, faith in the unseen, the ability to love even when loving isn't efficient, the ability to forgive even when forgiveness isn't useful, the ability to create something beautiful even if it brings no profit. None of that can be programmed, it can only be lived, and that is exactly what's being forgotten. Today, the system trains us to compete with machines. But what we should be doing is remembering what only humans are capable of. You can teach an AI to write a song, but it will never sing with a shiver. You can teach an AI to respond with wisdom, but it will never regret a mistake. You can teach an AI to mimic empathy, but it will never cry out of compassion. These are marks of the soul, and the soul only lives in those who still choose to be human, even when the whole world says it's slow, inefficient, or useless. The path is not to compete with efficiency. The path is to reclaim depth, because those who become deep will never be replaced. The soul cannot be replicated. It can only be revealed and formed. But that requires effort. It requires pause. It requires reflection. It requires asking the questions no one else is as. It requires living as if your existence truly matters. Because it does. When a human being stops striving to be irreplaceable, that's exactly when he becomes disposable. But the opposite is also true. When you return to living with presence, with clarity, with truth, you become essential. Even if no one says it out loud, even if the system tries to erase you, you become impossible to ignore. Because yes, the world may be ruled by efficiency, but it will be saved by consciousness, and that is still in your hands. You can abandon it, or you can strengthen it, but there's no more room for the middle ground. Not now. Not when the entire future depends on this choice. We live in a time where progress has become the new religion. Everything revolves around the idea of evolving, innovating, of going further, faster, more connected, but no one stops to ask, where are we going? Because progress without direction isn't advancement. It's blind acceleration. It's walking faster toward collapse. Modern civilization worships speed. If you're fast, you're valued. If you're efficient, you're rewarded. If you're productive, you're promoted. But if you stop to think, if you breathe, question, reflect, you become a problem. Because the machine doesn't like those who stop. The machine needs constant movement, even if it's meaningless. And that's exactly what's happening to the world. We are running, we are accelerating, we are launching, creating, scaling, automating. But the question is, why? After all, what are we trying to reach in such a hurry? What's the final destination of this race? And what if we're just running in circles? Or worse, toward the edge of a cliff? Today, we confuse progress with agitation. We confuse innovation with purpose. We confuse novelty with truth. And in doing so, we trade the essential for the spectacular. We produce more content than ever, but understand less. We create more connections than ever, but feel lonelier. We have access to everything, but no longer know what truly matters. This is not progress, it's illusion. True progress isn't measured in speed, it's measured in meaning. It's measured in inner transformation. It's measured by a person's ability to look back and say, today I am more just, more whole, more conscious. Today I'm more human than I was yesterday. That is the only progress that matters. But it's also the only kind of progress the current system doesn't know how to measure, because it doesn't generate profit, it doesn't go viral, it doesn't sell in pretty packaging. The truth is, much of what we call progress today is just accelerated distraction. It's movement without essence. It's productivity without soul. And the most dangerous part is that speed creates the illusion that we're advancing. We see the world spinning, the numbers rising, the feeds exploding, and we automatically assume we're improving. But we're not. We're sicker, more empty, more divided, more anxious, more disconnected from our origin, our purpose, our truth. And when you lose meaning but keep accelerating, you're just shortening the distance to the fall. Yes, you're running, but straight into the abyss. It's like a luxury car flying at high speed, but with no steering wheel. The feeling is power, but the destination is destruction. What we're lacking isn't more innovation, it's intention. Not more information, but wisdom. Not more spear, but meaning. We need to recover the most important question of all, why? Why did we create this? Why do we want this? Why do we wake up every day? Why are we alive? Without that question, all progress becomes deception. It becomes seduction. It becomes an empty spectacle. But with that question, even the simplest step gains eternal meaning. Technology can accelerate, but only consciousness can guide. Only purpose can sustain. Only truth can keep a man standing when everything around him is falling apart. The solution is not to abandon progress, but to redefine what it means, because we would rather move slowly with meaning than run fast with no idea where we're going. And maybe in the midst of all this rushing, a new generation of men and women is being born, people who are no longer impressed by speed, but by direction. People who don't just want to arrive first, but want to arrive where it truly matters. If you feel this, it's because something is still alive inside you. Something that isn't satisfied with the spectacle, something that resists the logic of the machine, something that wants, above all, to remember what it means to walk with purpose. And if you remember that, you will never again be dragged by the crowd. Because while everyone else is running, you'll be returning to the place where it all began, meaning. The word freedom has never been used as much as it is today. Everyone talks about freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of choice, freedom of identity. But few people stop to ask the right question. Am I still truly free? Because freedom isn't doing whatever you want. That's impulse. Freedom is choosing with awareness. It's knowing why you're doing what you're doing. It's acting out of conviction, not out of conditioned reflex. And when you begin to look at the world calmly, without the filter of screens, without the noise of narratives, you start to see that almost everything around you is trying to shape you. Not out of malice, but out of interest. The system no longer needs handcuffs or chains. It found something more efficient, the invisible programming of the mind. Today, people think they're choosing, but they're only reacting to a feed, to a headline, to a trend, to an ad tailor-made for their weaknesses. You wake up and grab your phone before remembering who you are. You scroll before taking a deep breath. You already feel behind before even getting out of bed. And before you know it, your day is being decided by someone you don't even know. It's no longer about censorship, it's about control through saturation. They show you so many different truths, so much polarization, so much empty outrage, that you start to doubt even what you feel, what you think, what you believe. And in this scenario, do you know what the system fears most? Clarity. Because a clear person is uncontrollable. A person who knows who they are, what they believe, and why they act the way they do is not easily manipulated. They don't change their mind because of a viral video. They don't adopt the outrage of the moment just to feel part of a group. They don't surrender to manufactured fear. But the system doesn't want this kind of person because they're dangerous. They inspire, they reveal, they disrupt the flow of consumption. They break the script. That's why everything today is designed to keep you distracted, unfocused, rushed, reactive, connected to everything except your own consciousness. And the more you live in this state, the easier it is to program your choices. The easier it is to make you believe it was your idea, when in reality it was just a reflex planted by repetition. Now think, how many decisions have you truly made for yourself in the past few months? How many thoughts are actually yours? And how many are just echoes of what you heard, read, or were conditioned to repeat? This is the question the system hates the most. Is this mine, or was it placed in me? Because when you start asking that, you begin the process of deprogramming. You begin to see the world from a new angle. You begin to see the strings behind the puppets. And suddenly you realize you are freer than you were yesterday. This is the kind of freedom that transforms. It's not the freedom to do whatever you want. It's the freedom to no longer be manipulated by those who want you to stay blind. And once you see, you can never pretend you didn't. Truth may be uncomfortable, but it sets you free. And maybe that's exactly why the system did everything it could to keep you from reaching this point. But now that you have, there's only one next step. Ask, doubt, observe, remember who you are, and take back what should have never been taken from you, your consciousness. In times of artificial intelligence, robots that paint, algorithms that write poems, and systems that respond with surgical precision, the inevitable question arises, what still makes us human? It's not intelligence that can already be simulated. It's not memory that can already be surpassed. It's not productivity that's already been replaced. What truly sets us apart is something no machine will ever be able to contain: the soul. The soul is what makes a man look toward the invisible and choose to live for it. It's what makes someone give up comfort for a value, what makes a mother get up in the middle of the night for her child, what makes a man die for justice. It's what makes love possible, regret real, courage alive. The soul is the flame that no logic can extinguish. It's the invisible axis of consciousness, the moral compass that still points north even when everything around is dark. It is, at the same time, fragility and eternity, mystery and direction. And the most incredible part, the soul does not obey time. The body ages, the mind fails, technology evolves, but the soul remains. Whether you acknowledge it or not, it's there, watching, whispering, waiting for you to hear it again. And to listen to the soul is something no machine will ever do. Machines can imitate human gestures, but never sacrifice out of love. Machines can produce masterpieces, but never understand what beauty is. Machines can offer comfort, but never transmit forgiveness. Because all of that requires something that cannot be programmed. It requires soul. And that's why, even in a world that idolizes efficiency, the presence of someone with soul is still undeleashable. A sincere gaze, a just act, a silence filled with meaning. These things can't be explained with data. They are felt, and they become eternal. Maybe you've never stopped to think about this. Your soul is the only thing in you that time cannot erode. That's why the deepest pains we feel are not physical. They are soul wounds, and so are the greatest healings. When someone truly loves us, when we are forgiven, when we do the right thing without applause, it's the soul that grows stronger. But the current system wants you to forget that you have one. It wants you to see yourself as a profile, as a consumer, as a moving algorithm. It wants you to believe everything is chemistry, everything is code, everything is temporary, Because if you forget you have a soul, you forget you were born for something eternal. And those who forget that live in fear, hide in distraction, operate on autopilot, and slowly begin to lose themselves. But those who reconnect with their own soul remember they were born for more. They remember they are not a product, not a mistake, not just another number. They remember they carry within themselves something no machine will ever have, the ability to transform pain into sacrifice, sacrifice into purpose, and purpose into eternity. You might be tired, you might be wounded, you might have failed, but if your soul is still alive, then there is still a path, there is still a mission, there is still a destiny. Because as long as the soul exists, man remains irreplaceable. There are moments in history when time stops being a straight line and becomes a crossroads, a critical point, an instant where the whole world holds its breath, waiting to see what the conscious will choose to do. And we are exactly at that moment. What stands before us is not just a crisis, it's a test, a universal question asked silently every single day. Will you let it all fall apart, or will you begin to rebuild what truly matters? Because the truth is simple, collapse is not inevitable. But it becomes certain when the right ones stay silent, when the conscious ones delay, when the strong get distracted, when the good become numb. If those who can see don't act, the world will be led by those who are blind. And when that happens, there's no hope, only the repetition of tragedy. We're not saying it's too late, but we are saying there's no more time for the undecided. The time to choose has arrived, and pretending you didn't see it is already a choice. If you're waiting for the perfect moment to start, you won't find it. There won't be a sign saying now it's safe. There won't be a blinking green light saying this is the way. Because the greatest movements in human history always began in chaos. They always began with someone saying, I won't wait any longer. Reconstruction demands courage. It demands sacrifice. It demands discipline. It demands thinking differently, acting differently, living differently. And most of all, it demands letting go of the need to save everything and everyone and choosing to save what matters. Save the truth, save the values, save consciousness, save the human spark that still flickers in a few, save the inner structure that sustains a meaningful life. You won't change the whole world at once, but you can be the breaking point within your generation. The lucid voice in the noise, the steady consciousness in the collapse, the presence that reveals what became invisible. The extinction of humanity, as essence, won't come from lack of capacity, but from lack of choice, from lack of conviction, from lack of action. And the world has seen this before. Every civilization that fell first from within. Before the walls crumbled, its values had already been abandoned. Before the cities collapsed, its collective consciousness was already compromised. Now, it's us. We are the generation that carries the weight of the turning point. We may not be the final heroes, but we can be the ones who light the first fire, the ones who prepare the ground, the ones who didn't run from the crossroads and who chose the harder path, but the only one worth walking. Collapse or reconstruction, the choice is alive, and it won't be made by the masses. It will be made by individuals, by men and women who still remember what it means to live with soul. And if you've made it this far, if you're still hearing this message with a restless heart, then maybe that choice is already being made in silence within you. Now all that's left is to turn that silence into movement. After everything we've said, after all the truths the world refuses to face, it becomes impossible to keep pretending this is just a video. It's not. It's a calling, a direct invitation, a turning point. History has reached a moment where living on autopilot is no longer an option. You either take part in building something meaningful, or you'll be swept away by the collapse that's already forming. But this reconstruction won't come from above. It won't come from governments, from systems, from pre-made formulas. It starts here, with consciousness, with clarity, with the decision to forge the last lucid generation before lucidity is completely forgotten. This generation won't be made of perfect people. It will be made of willing ones, of people who, despite the noise, still listen to their own soul, who even in the midst of distraction can still pause and think, who even when wounded by reality, choose not to numb themselves. This is the generation that Scheffer Vision seeks to awaken, not with empty slogans, not with easy answers, but with real questions, with reflections that disturb, with ideas that burn, with the vision of a possible future. Not if everyone agrees, but if the right ones move. Scheffer Vision is not just a channel, it's a way of seeing the world, a break from alienation, a path to synchronize what has been torn apart, thinking, acting, feeling, believing. It is the opposite of confusion. It is the attempt to align soul and behavior, reason and faith, courage and direction. Because without that synchronization, no one remains standing when the world collapses. And this is not about numbers, it's about roots, about forming a few, but forming them deeply. Because one lucid man can destabilize an entire culture of lies. One can reignite the spark that seemed lost in many. One can be the sign that hope still exists. If you feel this calling, don't wait any longer. Don't ask if this is the ideal moment. Reconstruction begins with those who have the courage not to postpone. You don't need to be followed by crowds. You only need to embrace the vision the world has tried to make you forget. And if that vision still lives inside you, then the world still has a chance. This is not a story where everyone will be saved. This is not a journey for the masses. It's not about convincing the entire world. It's not about going viral with an idea. It's not about dominating narratives. It's about honoring what's still true before it disappears. So much has already been lost. So many values have been traded for comfort. So much courage has been suffocated by convenience. So much lucidity has been diluted in the noise. But something still remains. There is still a flame. There are still men and women who have not completely surrendered, who haven't forgotten everything, who still feel stirred when they hear certain truths, who still cry on the inside when they see the state of things, who still ask themselves, is it still possible to do things differently? The answer is yes, but it won't be for everyone. It will be for those who choose. For those who stop waiting for collective salvation and begin building an individual reconstruction, deep, silent, enduring. The change the world needs doesn't begin with crowds. It begins with a man, a firm conscience, a lot for a decision, a step in the opposite direction. It begins with someone who chooses not just to criticize, but to live differently. Not just to theorize, but to act. Not just to mourn, but to rebuild with their own hands what the world threw away. Humanity can still live, but it won't survive by accident. It won't survive through technology, nor through diplomatic agreements, nor through campaign promises. It will survive if someone, even alone, decides to remain human until the end. Human in the deepest sense of the word, not a consumer, not a profile, but a being with a soul, with an axis, with purpose, with integrity, with memory, and with mission. The world doesn't need more noise, it needs presence, lucidity, truth that resists time, and people willing to live for them. You don't have to save everyone, but you do have to decide what you will do with what can still be saved. Because the worst kind of extinction is when man disappears from within and no one notices. But if there is still someone who feels, who resists, who believes, then there is still time. And maybe, just maybe, that person is you.